And I was muted. Hello, people, and welcome back to my channel. What a weird bunch you are. I love you guys. And no, can we see in the chat the hashtag no dragon for Tusk? I want to see that going. I want to see that going. Hello, plot hole. Plot hole is working. And the Keelah Talks one. The Keelah Talks one. You can never go wrong. You can never go wrong with that one. But yes, Tusk, you cannot have a dragon. You may strike all you want, but you cannot have a dragon. Keelah Talks. The fact that I even started this and my mic was muted. What's funny is that it mutes your mic automatically. And then like it usually unmutes you. But yeah. A goat dragon for Tusk. That's a new one. Yes, we're going to tie some wings onto a goat just for Tusk. Just for Tusk. How did you like the elevator music, by the way? I mean, I put it on because I was asked to put some music on while you're waiting, and you know, elevator music. But yeah, it wasn't worth the torture because elevator music is torture. So what are we doing here? What are we doing here? So I don't know if you guys have been watching. I'm sure that you have a little bit, but Amazon have had an issue recently where a lot of their members, 5,500, in fact, all voted on whether or not to join a trade union. We're going to get into that. For this discussion, I am blessed to be with Godless Scummer, who has a history of being in trade unions. So welcome, 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 welcome. I'm glad to have you on finally.
Thanks for having me on, Keelah. Yes, a lot of the chat probably know me. Some people know my channel. Others probably know me from in the chat. But also, what people may not know about me, as Keelah's pointed out, yeah, I was a shop steward at my place of work for 8 years and been a deputy shop steward for the past 5 years. I do feel I've got to be very clear on something right from the beginning, because I feel like I have to say this, that I am speaking tonight totally in a personal capacity, not on behalf of my trade union or their members. This is just, and also I'm going to say, if the question is, are trade unions fit for purpose? I'm probably going to be a little bit biased on my views on unions, as you can imagine with that background. So I thought I should just make those two things clear right from the beginning.
Thank you. Right, so people don't know a lot about my personal history. I am also a member. I'm actually at the moment, I'm a member of 2 trade unions. I've been a member of a specific trade union, which I'm not going to mention, because I don't want to be doxxed, basically. And I've been a member of that trade union since I was 13 years old. They were the only group that would allow a 13-year-old, because, you know, it was illegal for 13-year-olds to be actually working, but that never stopped us. So they were the only ones to actually have my interests at heart. So I've been with them since I was 13 years old. And that's 20 fucking years. That's 20 years I've been with a bloody trade union. And obviously for my new job, I joined a different trade union because they are the ones that my employers actually deal with. So we are going to, again, I'm a little bit biased, but I would have because of the sociology background, I would have a lot more skepticism when it comes to certain trade unions. So I'm going to give a bit of the background of what happened with the Amazon case, because that's so fucking important. And also then explain what happens when trade unions do gain power. What happens when they do go into bed with the government. What does it mean for their workers? What does it mean for their membership? And a little bit about the difference between a trade union leadership and the trade union membership, because there is a big difference that I do want to point out. So we do have a few trade unionists in the house, which is fucking brilliant. Usually trade unionists tend to be more on the side of science, just my experience. So yes, we are definitely. Tusk says the CWU sold out the entire staff of the Royal Mail. We'll get into that. We'll definitely come back to that, Tusk. Because you might have more information than I do about that.
I probably shouldn't comment on that, to be honest.
Yeah.
In my own, honestly.
Yeah, okay. Right, so what happened? What happened over the last couple of weeks? Well, I don't know if many people were watching it, but about a year ago, not even a year ago, John Oliver on Last Week Tonight did a brief, I say brief, half an hour at least, expose on the working conditions within Amazon. I'm going to get into that briefly, explain why it is people are taking this action, are looking into trade unions, and why it's actually important, and what the union should do in order to adapt to today's society, because we don't live in the society of the 1950s where trade unions were actually prevalent. And why is that? So it is an important discussion to have. I am giving it a little bit of time for people to join, because, you know, YouTube are shit when it comes to giving out the information that we're live, basically. I can't think. Brain, words. But while I'm waiting, because I have gotten 1 or 2 emails, I do want to share this. I'm going to share my screen for a second. Share my screen. Are you ready for this? Just so you know that it's all it's in progress. I need to take this down, don't I? Crap. What am I doing? Yes, notifications. People aren't getting the notifications. So sorry about the But yeah, I have officially gone for monetization. So it is being reviewed. It is in progress. So get your 333s ready to basically bombard me with the word 3 and give me a complex. It's always important to give me a complex about how I pronounce words. I gave Team Skeptic one the other day, I think, about how he pronounces a particular word, but we'll see if he actually says it on stream. I'm hoping he does. Right, so over the last couple of weeks, there has been a vote in the Georgia plant, one of the Georgia plants in Amazon, on whether or not to unionize. The reason for that, there's let me see. Yeah, sorry, I'm just trying to organize my notes, which I should already have. There's been 3 organizations actually been talking to them. And that is the International Brotherhood of Teamsters, which is a trade union. It's a particular trade union over in the US. There's the United Food and Commercial Workers Union. And the vote was actually for the RWDSU, which is the retail warehouse. I can't remember. Oh yeah, Retail, Wholesale and Department Store Union. Try say that 5 times fast, lads. I can't do it. I can't even say it once. But this is the main. They are actually part of the United Food and Commercial Workers Union as well. So that's actually kind of more like the TUC, if you think about it in British terms, or ICTU in Irish terms. And they're kind of an overarching conglomeration of unions. So there's been multiple people talking to them. So this was to join the RWDSU. And I'm not going to get bogged down in many terms. So there's about 1% of the Amazon workers working in Alabama. So that's about 5,000 people. I think it was 5,800, I think was the overall total, but it was about 5,000 working for Amazon in this particular plant. The conditions, I just want to explain. So first of all, 15:30 is the starting hour in Amazon. Now, when you hear 15:30, I work for a company similar to Amazon, and they offer similar wages. But then you have to take into account what that 15 quid an hour is for. So here's a list of some of the reasons why they were striking. It's a 10, sometimes 11, sometimes 12-hour working day. They get one 30-minute break. And I'm going to come back to the break in a minute because this is important. It's very physical work. It's people are literally passing out due to exhaustion. And the other workers are told to work around them. One item is picked every 8 to 10 seconds for the pickers, which is 4,000 packages a day. Now, what's important to understand with this is the plant that we're talking about, the warehouse that we're talking about, is the size of 9 football fields. This is not just a small plant. This is fucking huge. It can take you up to 20 minutes just to get to security. Excuse me. It can take you up to 20 minutes to get to security, and you only have a half an hour break. So you're literally getting to the canteen because you have to get to security. You have to line up with the rest of the people that are on break. You have to be searched, and then you're literally getting your food and straight back out onto the floor, and you're eating it while you're going back to your station. That's pretty much what's happening here. So you're on a performance boost. So if you basically everyone is has a GPS tracker. So they're looking at how much you are doing, how many packages you are picking a day or an hour, sorry. And then you're competing with everyone else in that warehouse. And if you slip at all, and I mean, people go for bathroom breaks, they're timed, they're monitored. If you slip from your expected performance, people are fired, people are harassed, you're taken into a one-on-one meeting. It is absolute terrifying. It's terrifying. People were fired for going under to conveyor belts, which, by the way, is very dangerous. We have conveyor belts where I work. They are actually dangerous, but there's no signs to actually say that you're not allowed to go under the conveyor belt. So they're being sacked for things that they're not trained in is not permitted. So, I mean, sort of shit out. Train people, The other thing is, like, when you're going in and out, and I can speak for crafty, yes, unions, no. That's questionable. Airport, when you're going through security in these places, it is like the airport. It's like going through the airport. It's not as simple as just a quick security check, scanned, and that's it. In some of these warehouses, you have to take off your shoes. You have to rattle your shoes. You have to take everything out of your pockets. You have, it's next level. It is airport style stop and searches, and this is when you're going on your break too. So it might take you 15 minutes to get to security. It might take you 10 minutes to get to security, but then you're like 5-10 minutes waiting to get through security. So literally, you're going into the canteen, you're getting your food, and you're going straight back into the warehouse because you just don't have time, and you're practically racing to get back to your station. So, I mean, these are important. So when you have a very pressurized work environment where everything is under scrutiny and anything can get you sacked, then you're just going to be, one, mentally and physically exhausted, and two, fearful every single day because there's no job security. And I want to bring up something that I was kind of on the margins of, which was 2013. You'll probably know about this, Goddess Gummer. Amazon in the Midlands in the UK.
Oh, I remember something about this. Yes.
Yeah. So I was
jog my memory, but yeah.
Yeah. I was helping to write up reports for my trade union because I was actually on the national youth committee, but it was actually international because it was the UK and Ireland. So I was helping write reports on this, because what happened in the Midlands in 2013 was there were 0-hour contracts. So 0-hour contracts, for people who don't know what they are, means there's no set hours, there's no job security. You could come in for an 8-hour shift, a 10-hour shift, a 12-hour shift, and you'll be told to go home after an hour. And that's legal. They could tell you not to come in the next day because they're not expecting a big, maybe an order has been cancelled or whatever, and so they're not expecting much. So they'll tell you to fuck off home. Bathroom breaks were monitored, and you were actually given a review once a month, because I spoke to people in the Midlands in this warehouse. Breaks were monitored. You were walking in this one warehouse. I think this one was the size of 3 football pitches. 27 up to 27 miles a day. You were given penalties for talking to your colleagues. If you got 3 strikes, if you got 3 penalties, you were fired. The other thing, what we found was, after they started to began this pattern of behavior. So after 12 weeks, what they would do is they would bring in recruitment staff or agency staff. And after about 12, 13 weeks, the recruitment staff would be sacked. No reason for it. They'd just be sacked. Except there was a reason. And the reason was because after 13 weeks in the UK, after a certain amount of time, it's required for the company to give you a full-time contract. They didn't want to do that. So a lot of companies, and I've worked for these companies as well, 3-month cutoff period. Doesn't matter who you are, doesn't matter how great you work. After 3 months, because they don't want to give you a permanent contract, you're out. And they'll kick you out. They don't give a shit. And there was a pattern to that. The other pattern was they told some of the recruitment, like Randstad recruitment was the ones that we were dealing with. 0-hour contracts were supposed to be gotten rid of. They're not. They're really not. And I'll talk about that in a second. But here's the biggest thing as well, was after you were there for some time, you basically, even as a recruitment worker, you still get certain benefits. So holiday pay is one. If you're there for 3 months, you deserve holiday pay. 2 weeks holiday pay, doesn't matter. But what was happening was they weren't being told, the workers were not being told that they were owed this pay. And Randstad actually came out after Channel 4 got in touch with them. They were doing a documentary on it, or they were doing a report on it. After Channel 4 got involved, Randstad sold out Amazon and said, yeah, we were told by Amazon not to tell the workers about this. Yeah, like that hurts. That really hurts. So you have around 45,000 staff in 4,500 staff in the UK based one. And what was remarkable was, because they didn't want to give full-time positions, they were busing people in as far away as 20 miles away. Recruitment agency staff. They had buses to bring people in, to prevent people from joining a union. That's what happened. Eventually they lost, and they had to actually give permanent contracts. They're only allowed to use agency staff now for Christmas and holidays, basically. So people won in that, but they're still not really allowed to unionize, even there. And what was also remarkable was the amount of non-nationals who weren't fluent in English, who didn't know their rights as a worker, who had a range of issues from literacy right through to backup, really. They didn't have any. The other thing is that in most countries in the world, so in most countries in the world, and this is what I would fight for as a trade unionist, is that you don't have a right to entry. And this is vital. This is absolutely vital. The right to entry means that you are allowed to enter a workplace to talk about the trade union. When you don't have members in a given plant or a given warehouse or a given shop, you are not allowed that right. And so when we're talking, and this is why it's important to look at this in the case of the recent Georgia case, when you don't have access to the workforce, you're not allowed enter, you're not allowed on the property of the plant, then it becomes, and the other thing is, while you don't have entry, the employer has 24/7 entry. They have, and what was happening. So yeah, it's a real problem. So you can't really explain to people in sound bites what a union means. You can't really explain to people what their rights are when you're standing at a traffic light, which, by the way, according to certain people, Amazon actually had changed because it was on their property. They had the right to actually change the traffic lights on their property. And so they were making it almost impossible to stop cars going into the warehouse to have these discussions.
I was just want to add that this is even a problem with in workplaces that are unionized and established unionized. It's that sometimes it is very difficult. A lot of the time to actually hold a meeting on the premises. And so a lot of the time you will have to try and organize a meeting on the gate. A lot of the time it depends on what you're calling the meeting for. So whims, obviously that's can be on the whims of the management. You can guarantee if it's there's a dispute going on and industrial action is possibly looming, your chances of being able to hold a meeting on the actual work premises are very, very slim. And it's not always easy to get people out in front of the gate, in front of the gates or whatever, when you are unionized, and let alone when you are not unionized whatsoever. It's really difficult to try and talk to people on their way in and out of work.
Yeah, and I mean as well, you're also talking to people either at the break of dawn because they're coming in at 7 a.m. or middle of the night, because sometimes they're like, I know in my warehouse, there's people that work from 5 o'clock in the afternoon till 3 a.m. There's people that start work at 2 a.m. and end at like 8 a.m. So it's not after like 8 to 10 hours or even up to 12 hours, because I've done 12-hour shifts. People know on this channel that I've done 12-hour shifts, one after the other, and it's exhausting. Like I didn't have the energy to even think, let alone think about a trade union. Luckily I already had that knowledge.
The last thing any worker's going to want to do at the very end of a long shift, there's only one thing they're thinking is, let's go home. They're not going to be. They're not thinking, let's go and talk. Let's go and talk about joining a union with some union guy who might be hanging outside the front because they can't get in to speak to people.
Exactly. The other thing is things like this. I want to bring this up. So if you can't see that, I understand that you can't see that, but these were placed in the bathrooms of all fucking places. They were placed in the canteens. They were placed on the way in, on the way out. Trade union is a labor union. You guys call them labor unions. But this was placed they couldn't even avoid the harassment in the bathroom. This is taken, you can see the tiles. This is placed in the bathroom. Unions can't, we can. So the idea is that, well, we can negotiate with you as an individual. Yeah, Road Fire Films has seen similar images to these. What is your union dues going for? Why pay a union to talk for you when you can do it yourself? Actually, a lot of people can't. One, because they don't know the law and what they're entitled to, and two, because of the threat of fucking being kicked out. And the problem with it is, unions as a whole take away that intimidation aspect of, you are on your own. You're not on your own. You have a union there. You have a group there. And it's legal. It's legal to actually join a trade union.
Yeah.
They cannot discriminate against you, but they do. We know they do.
It's the old adage, really, when it comes down to it, that it's the old adage that you are stronger in numbers than you are as an individual. And what unions offer is collective bargaining. You have power when there is collective bargaining, and you do not have as an individual, as a worker.
I just want to pull this up because this actually breaks my heart. So I'm just going to share the screen again, because this is important to understand how badly people were being harassed. So one of the things they did was they brought you in for a one-on-one conversation about the trade union. They brought you in groups to answer any questions and to kind of intimidate the small groups. And they did this. Between 3 and 5 anti-union texts a day were being given. Were being sent to every worker in the company. So a word from the leadership. JC 43 has been working at Amazon since April and loves it. The job provides affordable medical, dental, and vision benefits for his family, which saves him $800 a month and helped pay for his 2 sons' braces. JC, whoever the fuck JC is saving as much as he can for retirement, taking advantage of Amazon's 401k match. He voted no and mailed the ballot the same day he received it. Read the full article. These are the kinds of texts that people would get. Here's another one. We're in the final stretch. It's incredibly important that you vote and make your voice heard. Every vote counts in choosing whether or not you want the union to represent you and the 5,800 co-workers. I can't even read anymore. Vote no. This is coming from management, guys. This is coming from management. If your manager texts you this, what are you going to do? When you have nobody else to talk to, and again, this is just vote no. If that is coming from your management and you don't have anyone to talk to about it, you're afraid to talk to anyone about it, what are you going to do? Of course you're going to vote no, because you're terrified and you don't have any experience of unions. So you're going to buy the bullshit that if you organize into a trade union, because you have absolutely no history with a trade union, you're going to believe your manager, and that first one of, we give you benefits, we give you dental, we give you this, we give you that. That is a veiled threat. That is a veiled threat, and I don't care what anyone says. That's basically saying, if you vote yes, you're going to lose these benefits. And if you rely on those benefits, you are going to be terrified. Doesn't matter how strong of a person you are, you're going to be terrified. And that needs to be addressed. That is the first thing that needs to be addressed. That is harassment. It's that kind of thing. It's that kind of thing that just pisses me off.
It's that kind of thing that kind of made me want to become a union steward, to be honest. and why I do think trade unions are important. It's not to say that I think trade unions are perfect, because we know they're not, and I'm sure we'll probably talk about that a bit later.
We will,
but
we absolutely will.
Yeah, but yes, I think I don't think people should necessarily underestimate the lengths employers will go to intimidate workers or whatever, if they feel they need to. Now,
They
I
hired
don't necessarily.
companies.
Yeah,
They actually hired companies, and this is important. They hired
yeah,
companies for PR. They hired companies. They
mm.
hired a set of solicitors that are
Was it
trained in union law, in labor law.
was this the Burke Group by any
Yeah,
chance? Yeah,
yeah,
for those who don't know, the Burke Group is this. Yeah, that's what I said. It is a sort of group that gives legal advice. So basically, these are professional union busters. They well known in the US. Some companies in the UK now, I believe, have consulted with them
yes.
in efforts to try and not only to stop unions getting into places that are ununionized, but to actually break unions in companies that are unionized.
Well,
Yeah,
so
I'm very aware of them.
I want to explain to people, and I know there's a lot of trade unions. It actually warms my heart to see as many trade unionists in the chat. It really does. It makes me happy. But let's explain what a trade union is. A trade union is an organization based on membership of a workforce. For the I don't know for the common interest of that workforce. So bosses are always going to have their interests and their stakeholders' interests at heart. Always going to do. And so unions are there they're supposedly be there for the interests of the workforce, for collective bargaining, as Jeff has said. It is a very, very important tool, and I just want to explain what exactly to do the Life of Brian thing. What has a trade union ever done for me? First of all, the first kind of trade unions popped up in and around the beginning of the 19th century, late 18th century, beginning of the 19th century.
Yeah.
So one of the things that they were arguing for was an 8-hour day, because people need to be able to rest. They need time with their family. We will definitely get to that, Tattie. I'll bring that up now in a second. So they gave us the 8-hour day. They gave us labor laws. So, for instance, they got rid of child labor. You are not allowed to work unless you are of a certain age, to prevent exploitation of children. They gave us holidays, because we need fucking holidays. And sometimes a couple of hours off or a day or two off is not enough. We have holiday pay because of trade unions. People say they take it too far, but when you work like I do, at the moment I'm working 10 hours a day. That is way beyond the 40-hour week, guys, because I work 5 days a week. So I actually work 50 hours a week, and I know it's illegal. But at the same time, one, I need the money, and two, it's during a pandemic, and they know during a pandemic people are not going to make noise because they might get sacked, and the only thing worse than working too many hours in a week is having no job during a pandemic. I'm going to be honest. So yes, weekends are nice. What was happening was, at one point I was getting a day off midweek and a day off at the end of the week, which was also nice. But having those 2 days of rest is absolutely vital. But yeah, I want to go back to Tattie's question.
I was going to say there's a very good thing on the PCS page, it's just the Public Civil Service Union, about what have the unions ever done for us, and which goes through a lot of these things, and some of the, and also dispels some of the myths like unions just organise strikes, just destroy the economy, all that sort of stuff as well, which is a very good little thing to read.
Yes, absolutely. But there's a question there. How does Jeff think the union laws in the UK are looking post-Brexit? I mean, it's too early to tell, really.
To be at the moment, no different. I do feel, I don't really want to get into a Brexit debate, but I feel that a lot of the attitudes of and I'll say actually some of the trade unions in the UK were divided on this. A lot of them were pro-Europe. I know like the RMT was one notable exception, but I think a lot of the time we've had some positive thing about Europe and whatever, but I think there's almost been a myth of the fact that every positive thing that's grown in the last 30 years, so that every positive thing that benefits workers is somehow was gifted to us by the European Union, and it's really, I feel, forgetting a lot of the history of not just unions but working class struggle, and what it's always been a fight to get these things and to keep these things, and it will continue to be so.
Okay, so a few people have brought up that overtime is completely gone in the UK. It's at this point. It is at this point that I want to explain the pitfalls. So I'm in Ireland. People know I'm in Ireland. Ireland has a very, very strong trade union tradition. We always have. And the reason being is Jim Larkin. And anyone that doesn't know Jim Larkin, hang your head in shame, man. Hang your fucking head in shame. Go research Jim Larkin. Jim Larkin was one of the people who set up the Dublin Trade Union. I say one because he couldn't have done it alone, of course. But what happened was in certain plants around the country, people were literally being thrown out for any reason because we were a poor population. It was, British colonialism, no offense, but the jobs were, there was more people than jobs at the time, is the point. And we were still quite an agricultural society, so we didn't really have an educated workforce. So, yes, Ox, hang your head in shame. See some nice grass that you want. But yes, please, I'll get to James Connolly in a minute. But Jim Larkin, for us, is the union man. What happened there was when him and others tried to organize people into trade unions, there's what's known as the Great Dublin Lockout. And there's multitude of books on what happened during the lockout. It went on for months and months and months. And eventually it was broken because of scabs, because they would bus in scabs. Scabs are people who will just take the jobs anyway. But there was a lot of support. There was a lot of support for the workers during the lockout. It went down in Irish history. The 1913 lockout is as big to us as the Easter Rising. So yes, we were defeated in that. But what happened went on because of that strike, because networks were beginning to be created. That ultimately led to the likes of the Easter Rising, because people knew that there was support there. So Jim Larkin is gone. In walks James Connolly, and James Connolly comes from this big trade union tradition, like Jim Larkin. And he says, you know what? It's not over. Let's try again. And let's learn the lessons that we didn't learn the last time, that we didn't know the last time. And this time, what we're going to do is we're going to have cities, and we're going to spread to the railways. And if they try to break us, we'll shut down the railways. And that was the big thing when they got the railways. It's all well and good having warehouses and retail and plants to shut down. Once you got the railways, you can't bus in food. You can't bus in. At the time, there was no buses. Everything was done in the railways. So the big thing for us was the railways. Once the railways were unionized, that was it. They couldn't do shit. So automatically in and around 1915, so this is 2 years after, so they were constantly working in the background to get the trade unions in place on the railways. And it switched from like the Jacobs factories and stuff like that into the railway. They got the railways on board, and there you go. It was then legal to...
Yeah. I mean, there was a similar, I will say, there was a thing in the early part of the 20th century in the UK called the Triple Alliance between three of the biggest and I'd say key workers in Britain at the time, and it would have been the General Municipal Workers Union, which still exists today in the form of the GMB, the railway workers, and the National Union of Mine Workers. Now, and obviously, if there was one thing that was as important as the railways as well, it was coal back then. And the idea being that if one group was attacked, they would all kind of go out in against this. There's, for all sorts of reasons I haven't got time to get into. It didn't last, and it didn't necessarily always work in practice, but there was the understanding of where the key, there certainly was an understanding at one time of where the key sectors would be.
Well, I mean, the reason why I bring the origins are important. But the thing that I want to talk about really when it comes to the drawback of the unions is that they decided, which it's not a wrong move. It's not the worst move in the world. It's understandable why they chose to, both in Ireland and the UK, why they chose to kind of go down that route. They decided to set up a political party called Labour. Yes, those in the UK will definitely know Labour. Those of us in Ireland knows the decimation of Labour Party. But the Labour Party was set up to be a voice for the trade unions.
Yes.
And so what happened, I'm going to let you talk about the UK situation, but I'll talk from myself, from my position. What would happen is every couple of years, we have two main parties in Ireland, Fine Gael and Fianna Fáil, and they're both kind of right-wing-ish parties. Well, not even ish, but they're kind of right-wing parties. So what would happen is, because the Labour Party was never big enough to actually go into Parliament on its own, they would have to back up one of these parties. Fianna Fáil was always seen as the party of the working man. They weren't. They just had the illusion of it. It's which side were you on in the Civil War, basically. And what ended up happening was an interesting thing. The trade unions were brought in to the boardrooms with management and with government. And we were seeing a removal, any decent shop steward. So you'd have your trade union leaders, and then you would have ordinary people on the shop floor as shop stewards who were they were workers in the given workplace, but they were also on a wage, or they'd be given a subsidy from the trade union sometimes, if the trade union was big enough. So these shop stewards, if they were good, what happened was they were being pulled off the shop floor, and they were given roles within the trade union, bureaucratic roles within the trade union. So we then see a layer of bureaucracy where it's easy. I mean, so SIPTU is SIPTU. SIPTU is the biggest trade union in Ireland. and its director is on, I think he's on 87,000. Now, when you're representing workers that are on 20 to 30,000 and you're on triple what they're earning, how can you say you represent them? So this is where the union dues have been going. So the problem with that is that the union leaders, if they are allowed to do this, if they're allowed to get away with this, what happens is their interests are more in the interests of the government of the day and of keeping the employers happy. The employer is happy, they're going to want to deal with them instead of a different union. This is what we're seeing at the moment with absolute haywire in the last couple of years with, I'll get into it in a minute. But so what you have is a layer of bureaucracy sitting on top of the unions. And when you have trade unions that are not with their representatives who aren't recallable, so the union that I'm part of, that I've been part of and proud to be part of since 2013, since I was 13, we elect our leaders every 2 years. We elect our leaders every 2 years, and every leader is recallable. And the reason for that is, if this individual who is sitting at the top of our leadership doesn't do what we want them to do, all we have to do is call an EGM of the entire union and put forward a vote and say this person no longer has our confidence because of these reasons. They are recallable. And when you have people who in the union who are recallable, what it does, it increases accountability. And so the union management, the union leaders then understand that their role is not to keep management happy. Their role is to keep their members happy. And there's a big difference. There's sometimes a fucking world of difference. When you are on one of these conveyor belts and you have to pick 4,000 items a day and you are being judged on your performance, you are not going to take the 20 minutes it takes to get to the bathroom and back to have a piss. You're going to have a bottle and you're going to go at the conveyor belt if you can get away with it. Because if your job is on the line and you have absolutely no job security, what's going to happen is you're going to protect your job and you're going to demean yourself without even realizing you're demeaning yourself for the sake of
I think it's a good thing that you bring. I could go a little bit further on where I think trade union bureaucracy and the role they play. But I think, there was a good old revolutionary socialist called Tony Cliff who's made this analogy that the union bureaucracy is kind of like a safety valve. If there's too much steam, they'll let the pressure off for a little while, but basically is to keep the valve of the engine going. Which is more of an analogy of him saying, despite what a lot of people think, these people aren't like, revolutionary insurrectionists trying to bring the government down, which is obviously a big myth that you'll hear from the right about them. But yeah, you get them, unfortunately, they get into a position where they're neither employers nor workers. They, in a sense, are the go-between, in a sense, and there is the problem that they are detached. And especially when it comes to general secretaries, yes, because some of them are on, I think some, you think how much we complain about how MPs are paid compared to the majority of their constituents. I can probably say that the average general secretary of a large trade union in the UK is probably getting paid more.
Yeah.
So sometimes that says a lot.
Definitely. And this is why I wanted to have the discussion, because a lot of people in certain circles, especially if you are a trade unionist, it's almost frowned upon to talk ill about the trade unions. But we have to,
Yeah.
and one of the reasons, and V. Rankin says it, this and corruption is why I left the Teamsters, which is understandable. I'm still pro-union, but I've seen what happens in long-established unions. Here's the issue with, I take two issues with that. And I understand completely what you're talking about. It's easy to get disillusioned. But here's the problem that I see with that. And sometimes it's hard. It is hard to keep your nerve. But it's the same thing as going in and saying, I'm not going to be part of a union because my boss is an asshole. If you're not willing, and if people, not just you as an individual, I'm using the royal you, us in general, if we're not willing to go in and challenge our own trade union, then we have a problem. The best way of defeating the corruption bullshit, vote them out. Vote the fuckers out. Hate to say it, but that's the best way. And that is hard. It is hard to convince people of doing what's in their best interest when what's in their best interest seems like a fucking mountain to climb. And sometimes it really does. It really is a mountain to climb, because even looking up there at that mountain saying, this is my general secretary, this is the national secretary, how can I challenge them? Fucking vote them out. You can do that. You can actually do that.
I mean, if I was to definitely say to anyone who is even if you're just a member of a trade union, you can vote them out. I would just suggest, though, if you can, try and make an effort to go to like local branch meetings and stuff and find out a bit about how the union works as well. If you can, I suppose I was in a lucky position in a way that generally my union tends to hold its annual conference not too far away from where I live. So even when I'm not a delegate there, I can easily go in and watch what's going on, and it's my right as a union member to do so. Now, without getting technically speaking, within my own trade union, technically the national executive committee are the final say on everything, and they are up for election, I think, on a yearly basis.
Year every 2 years, depending on what trade union.
Yeah.
But they have to have elections.
Yeah.
And that's the thing, right? So I just want to give an experience from my own perspective, right? And here's how a group of individuals, it doesn't even take 80% of the trade unions. It just takes a group of people to voice your concerns, right? So when I joined the trade union, when I actually got involved heavily with the trade union, I was about 20 years old. So I'd been in the trade union a while. My granddad was the one that got me into it. But the particular union that I was in had a kind of open side, but it was still, I don't mean this to sound bad, but it was still mainly old men. Because the demographics of trade union membership was traditionally the older generations. The younger generations, it wasn't translating. We weren't told about unions. We were told basically, keep your head down, keep your job, shut the fuck up. Get a loan, get a car. Get a loan, get a house. Get a loan, get this. Go to college. We were told the wrong thing. We weren't taught about trade unions. And so when I entered the trade union and actually got involved properly, the youth committee didn't exist. And so I went to my the national secretary. I was invited to because of where I lived, I was invited to a union meeting with not just a job, but because of where you live, you were also given a area code or whatever. So I went to my local meeting and I said, right, well, where's all the young people? Where's all the young people? And I wanted to put forward a motion to say that the young members should be allowed to link up and talk about stuff that is affecting young people, especially with the gig economy, especially with 0-hour contracts and flexible contracts, especially with what we were having to face with. Because we were not in What did you think? Yeah, that was fucking disgusting, by the way, Tusk. That was despicable. I'm not even going to get into that. That just pisses me off. But
yeah, I think that's yeah, wow.
yeah, I'm not going, like, you can hear me grit my teeth. But right, so when I went into the trade union properly, and again, I was 19, 20, I was like, where's all the young people? You know, there has to be more than just me under the age of 50 years old in this fucking trade union. So, and there was, thankfully. So I was allowed to put forward my motion to the National Executive Committee. They accepted. And so when it came to the rules change or whatever, I was asked, because I was submitting it, I was then asked to put it forward. Now, a lot of people without my background, without my fucking mouth, because let's face it, I have a big one and I'm not afraid to use it. A lot of people my age wouldn't have had the confidence to go up in front of 17,000 people and argue my case and say, look, we need a youth committee. We need a group of people who are focused on young members and recruiting young members who actually knows what we're going through. And that's no disrespect to the people who have been in their jobs many years. We need to learn from you. We're not learning from you, and that's the problem. We're not learning from you because we don't see a reflection of us in our trade union, and that's a problem. Again, I was 20 years old when I stood up and said that. And we got our fucking youth committee. I was on the first youth committee of that trade union.
Can I take my hat off to you, Keelah? As somebody who has spoken at a general conference of my union in front of a few thousand people, it is quite nerve-wracking to get up there and speak. Ironically, though, somebody filmed it, and it's really weird. I was nervous as hell, but I actually think I spoke a lot better than what I do normally when I'm trying to speak to just my own members. Or, I mean, a lot of the time I can't listen to myself talk on YouTube when I'm back, because sometimes I'm just like, oh, I'm stuttering all over the place and stuff, you know. So,
crafty mouth, you must be confused. Well, I mean, look, it takes a lot to get up when you're not used to it, especially. So you're talking about young workers, you're talking about people who, something like that is intimidating. And because of the power structure that you were born into, you're not used to challenging authority. So going up even though the trade union is a different entity, people don't understand that power structure, that power dynamic. The membership has to have the power. Otherwise, it's just another talking shop. And this is another thing that I have an issue with. People, shut the fuck up. Tusk, you asshole. I love the chocolate. Yeah, I had I'm not even joking. I have a photo somewhere that I sent to Tusk and Etty about how much chocolate I got in one day. It's ridiculous, but we're not going to talk about that. It was a lot. It was about 40 bars. But anyway, yeah, so it is intimidating when you don't understand the structure. And so what happened then was, because my trade union was over the UK and Ireland, I was then asked by the national secretary to go and put the same motion to the international conference, that the young people of this group need a youth committee between Ireland and the UK. And they were like, well, of course. Why didn't we think of it? Oh, yes, because we didn't have any young members stepping up to the fore saying we need to be reflected in our union. And it's remarkable. And again, I'm not trying to make anyone feel bad. I'm not trying to target anyone out or single anyone out. But it's exhausting, and you need the energy. Thankfully, I had the energy, and at the time, the organization I was working for was like, yeah, do this. It was a political organization, so they were like, go ahead, this is great. So because of a small group of individuals, we created for ourselves a position in the union of power, because we were collectively bargaining within our union for collective bargaining rights. That is, yeah. I haven't eaten the 40 bars still, though. Jesus, I'm not that bad. But that's important. It's important to feel ownership of trade unions. One of the things that frustrates me because I've been involved in sociology for so long, I've been involved in politics for so long, I've been involved in community politics for so long. One of the things that frustrates me is the Tina excuse. Do you know the Tina excuse?
I personally have never heard it.
So Tina is what's being shoved down your throat at all fucking minutes of the day that you don't even realize. Tina stands for there is no alternative. And the Tina excuse, you'll hear it in many forms. They're all the same. There's nothing you can do. There's no way for. First of all, different political parties are different for a reason. And it's getting the political parties or the political organizations, they don't even need to be parties, but the political groupings that reflect you the best, maybe not perfect, but you can fucking organize within it, that reflects you best. And through them, argue for change. It's the same with the trade unions. Not all two trade unions are the same. They're not. CWU, even the same fucking unions are not the same in different areas. For instance, the CWU, Tusk rightly calls out there was an issue there. The unions failed. You can't win every battle. You can't. And believe me, I know you can. Over here, the CWU is completely different in its makeup. Because it's a smaller union, I think we're able to hold our leaders more to account than it is the beast over in the UK. Having said that,
it's about the 5th or 6th largest union in the UK.
Having said that, it's still possible to change that union. It's still possible to guide it in the way that you want it to go. It's not always perfect, and it's not always going to win. And sometimes, for some fucking reason, they just don't even try, because in the leadership's mind, they're picking and choosing their battles. And the problem is, when you are so far removed sometimes from your membership, you're picking the wrong battles, and you're letting the battles that are important fail. And why I bring this up is collective bargaining, coming back to collective bargaining. When the trade unions went into coalition with the government, went into agreements with the government, and this is just on the Irish side of things, we had 3 different trade unions. We had Impact, SIP2, and I can't remember the other one. But 3 trade unions or 4 trade unions go into a deal without really talking to members. And it was the public sector pay deal. During the bust, when everything went tits up and the banks were bailed out, the trade unions were busy jumping into the pockets of the politicians saying, save us, save us, save us, in some way, shape or form. And to some extent, the government were doing the same thing. So they locked the trade unions into an agreement that was so fucking barbaric. Why any trade union would ever fucking agree to it, I have no clue. So that, and the problem with it was, the public sector in Ireland were the ones that were always the ones to fight for things. They were the most militant. They were the most, and I hate the word militant, but they were the most militant. They were the most outspoken. They were the most effective. When you cut off the heads of the trade union, and everyone in the private sector has no trade union because they weren't taught that trade unions are actually beneficial.
Yeah, I mean,
then you have a problem.
Tell you quite an extreme case that happened within the UK was trade union called Usdaw, which represents a lot of sort of people who work in sort of supermarkets. They actually signed away their own collective bargaining rights with Tesco, who are obviously a massive They actually
They're like Walmart. They're the UK equivalent of Walmart.
Yeah. That, I mean,
for the Americans.
and they actually have ends up with this deal where they've got quote unquote consultative rights but not collective bargaining rights, and they actually sign, they actually, put that deal in front of their members. And I mean, and I've actually even heard some people, and I still defend it, saying, well, our members actually voted for it. So, but
Doesn't make
like
it good.
like you said, the Tina thing a minute ago was the analogy. Of course, probably, of course, they voted for it because you told them this was the best deal they were going to get.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, for us, here's the thing: the trading, and this is the problem with linking it specifically to any or one political party. So for us, your union dues, whether you wanted it or not, to an extent, were given to the Labour Party. And again, this is the way you you change your trade union. When the Labour Party went into government the last time with Fine Gael, they completely fucking decimated things. Like, for instance, trade unions are one of the reasons why we have childcare, because you need somewhere to put your child when you have to go to work. The Labour Party over here decided we have a thing called child benefit, and it's the state recognition of every child in the state, that they have a duty of care to every child in the state. It's a very, very important thing. And during the early development of Irish society, when this was set up in the 70s, 60s, 70s, the whole point of it was to give money to the mothers, because it got rid of this idea that the men were the wage earners and therefore they got to decide what happened to the money. Because what was happening was a lot of the men at the time, because they were fucking overworked, underpaid, and depressed, they'd go, not all of them, but a lot of them would end up in spending it on alcohol. And so this was a way of ensuring that the children were not hard done by. It was a state recognition that they have a duty of care to every child. And it was given up to the point that the children left school. And this was argued for by trade unions. We got this because of the trade unions. It was a vital piece of legislation. And what ended up happening, breaks my heart, was the cunt who ended up running the department for quote unquote social protection, which is basically the dole, decided that she would cut it. She would cut it off completely, and lone parents as well, completely, when the child turned 7. Get your head around that, folks. When your child turns 7, you as a lone parent do not get child benefit and do not get lone parents. You get nothing. You are told to go out and work when your child turns 7. Who's going to look after your child when the child comes home from school? Are they supposed to get a job too? In an area where there are no jobs, in a time when there, and again, this was done in 2011 or 2012. This isn't when the economy got better. This was mid-bust for us. Because we had a bust in 2008, and that was the big one. And 2008, 2009, 2010, I'm sure the UK was the same, where they were hollowing out all of the extras. They were hollowing out the any buffer around the poverty line. So they were getting rid of the fuel allowance for old people to be able to heat their homes in the winter. They were getting rid of the Christmas bonus for people on welfare to be able to afford Christmas for their children. Stuff like this. Yeah, 7-year-olds can work quite effectively. Yes. But thanks to trade unions, they don't have to. They're allowed to be children. So that was the point. This was a Labour Party move. This was not a right-wing. This was the political arm of the trade unions, attacking ordinary people in the worst fucking way. So
yeah.
And again, Americans don't quite understand the system that we have over here. But
I mean, yeah. And I say this is has been a little bit of a historical problem for trade unions across Europe, really. That a lot of them are very, very wedded to the sort of main sort of social democratic party
yeah,
in their country, whether it be like the SPD in Germany, or most notably, and I'd say very, very much so in the case of the British Labour Party, because as you pointed out earlier in the stream, the British Labour Party was created by the trade union leaders to have a voice in Parliament, because the more established Liberal Party weren't not giving them that. That was the main reason the Labour Party was formed, and they are very, very wedded to that idea. Even when quite often some of the biggest attacks on trade union rights and on working people has quite often come from Labour governments.
Yeah.
It's not always the Conservatives that are the ones on the.
But the reason why, it's important to talk about it, because you can't fix a problem if you don't talk about it, folks. You have to talk about the ugliness of the trade union movement too. So what happened when the Irish Labour force were absolutely vehemently attacked by the Labour Party? What happened was there was a huge movement in Ireland to stop union dues going to the Labour Party. Now, that was unprecedented in Ireland, because they'd been in power before, they'd sold out before, but the scale of the sellout this time was enough to anger people so bad that all but, I think, 2 trade unions, which weren't very, very big trade unions, it was Impact and one of the teaching unions, which is more conservative, all of them broke connection to the Labour Party, which meant the Labour Party went from having almost a majority in government to, I think they had 35 seats, or no, they had 28 seats in Parliament. You need 35 or 36 to make a majority. They had 28 seats, down to 3.
Yeah.
3 fucking seats. They were wiped out, and they aren't coming back anytime fucking soon.
I said there's actually 12 unions in the UK that are affiliated to Labour, and there's obviously a lot more unions than 12. I mean, there's 2 very notable ones missing from this, which would be, the there's actually systems. There's several quite notable ones missing from this, like the National Union of Teachers, the RMT, but that they were expelled from the Labour Party, and the PCS. But if you look at the majority of the larger unions, sort of the GMB, the CW, the Fire Brigades Union are back in now, though they were expelled for a while. And the Bakers, Fat Food and Allied Workers Union, who I will say, to their credit, have done some good work around trying to unionise fast food workers in the UK. They've had some little bits of success, but they've not quite broken through yet. But there is, a lot of the big ones are affiliated to the Labour Party, and are very, they are absolutely wedded. And I've often described it as an abusive relationship that they're in, quite frankly. You keep going back to your abuser. That is quite often the case with the trade unions and the Labour Party.
Very much so. Well, I do want to talk really quickly, because what can you do as a trade unionist, right? You have several avenues open to you. It's not all about strikes. The first thing I want to say, not all about strikes, not all about militancy, not all about gur arg. So, I mean, for people who want to ram that down your throat, it's not. The majority of the time, if there is, first of all, it's to say, okay, we want this, this, and this. So the union will go and argue for this, this, and this. And maybe throw in another little bit just to see. You always go with your strongest foot forward. If they don't get it, what would usually actually happen, and more often than not, instead of big union demonstrations, which never happen, well, they do happen. They've happened a few times now. Big union demonstrations. Before that, there might be a strike or two, depending on what happens. But most of the action is actually work to rule. The most effective action is work to rule. And work to rule means you do not do overtime. That what's written in your contract, if it's not written in your contract, you do not do it. And the reason why I say this, and this is important, because that can break a company. That can really break a company. But strike action, the ability to down tools, the ability not to go into work, the ability to pull your labor, is so powerful. And my aunt, and this is why I raised this. My aunt was one of the Dunnes Stores workers. If you don't know what happened with the Dunnes Stores workers, what happened was the union decided, well, a lot of the trade unions decided that they were not going to handle goods from South Africa during apartheid. And my aunt, along with some of her colleagues, stayed true to this. They were on strike for months. And I mean months. It was so hard that without the trade union, and without the generosity, and I mean overwhelming generosity of the Dublin people, she would not have been able to pay her bills. She would not have been able to feed her family, because Dunnes was just not fucking budging. History proved her right. Because it was because of the bravery of the Dunnes Stores workers that other retail workers came out in support. Said, you know what? We're not going to handle South African goods either. Because they came out, what happened was the Irish government were forced to get involved. Were forced to actually start listening to them. And it had a ripple effect, the likes of which you could never imagine. The Dunnes Stores workers are credited as one of the big pillars that helped to galvanize the international movement against apartheid. One of the pillars, one of the main pillars that helped bring apartheid down. Those sanctions were significant. And my aunt, for years and years and years, questioned whether or not she did the right thing. Whether, she was told at one stage by one of her managers that, apartheid would end eventually and it doesn't matter what we do. Dunnes were right bastards. They were fucking absolute scumbags when it came to that strike. And that used to be our bedtime stories, but that was told to us a lot, which is one of the reasons why I got interested in sociology and understanding how societies work. And okay, so Nimrod has an interesting one before you come in. Here in Sweden, the unions are powerless now, but they do some good. They twisted Ryanair's arm big time. One reason Ryanair now lets its staff to unionize. That's a controversial one, because Ryanair are still cunts and they will not tell staff that they are allowed to unionize. And I worked for Ryanair. I don't like talking about this, but I worked for Ryanair. I could actually get fucking done for talking about.
Effectively, really, what he's saying is really, at least in Sweden, it looks like they were forced to concede that, which is obviously that's a good result. Now, what you said about, it's a similar thing, I think, with certainly, obviously, British trade unions as well. Yeah, they've, it's very well documented that British trade unions have had that really, since the 80s and into the early 90s, they really, for lack of a better words, had their nuts cut off by the government.
Yeah.
Obviously, I don't go too much into the history of this, but everyone knows what Margaret Thatcher did to the unions, but one of the reasons she was successful, where she say some of her predecessors from both Labour and Conservative governments were not successful in taking on unions, is the others made the mistake of taking on all of the unions at once. Yeah. Margaret Thatcher didn't do that. People forget that 2 years before the miners' strike, she actually caved into the miners on another issue, because she was having a very big fight with steel workers at the time. One of the first big fights that government had. But I've been involved with 2 national strikes now, and they've been they have been effective when I've seen the position we were in beforehand, and the fact that we bought that company were forced back to the table when they did not want to negotiate. Now, I could definitely argue about whether we necessarily got everything out of it we should have done with them, but the last couple of times we've had ballots, it's been more or less it's been just the threat of it alone has been. And I'll just say this: none of us want to strike. No one wants to go out and strike and lose money. Nobody wants that.
Exactly.
But ultimately, if you are sometimes put in a position, it is the yes, it's the nuclear option, and sometimes it has to be used, and it's not necessarily work. You won't necessarily win every battle, but the thing is, you do nothing, you definitely will lose. And exactly. I've definitely been in enough strikes and been around enough to see, generally, they are very. It's the quickest way to get companies to the table and wanting to talk seriously.
When you seriously go out on strike, I just want to say, Seek Truth says, I try to stay serious and then I fall into a trance listening to Crafty's voice. I then come around suddenly, usually when she swears. I've been, people like it when I drop the cunt bomb, apparently. I say cunt a lot, and I don't mean it to sound as forceful as it does, but yeah, it's just the way I say it. I don't care. Well, interestingly enough, right? So I was in Dublin during 2016. A lot of shit happened during 2016. But one of them was that the the Lewis drivers. So we have a tram in Dublin, and instead of just calling it a fucking tram, we have to be all fancy. So we called it the Lewis for some fucking reason. And they were going out on strike. They're a private company. And they went out on strike for conditions. The conditions that they were being forced to work in was absolutely astronomically bad. The new contracts that they were being given. And they weren't unionized. So they joined a trade union and went out on strike. Even though Transdev, who owns the Lewis, basically said, oh yeah, we won't negotiate. Okay, well then we're going to stop the trams. And so they stopped the trams, which was fun. And this was all in and around the time of the commemorations, the 100-year commemoration. And I remember being on a bus and I was talking to some lads And they were older lads. They weren't old, but they were older. They were in like I was in my 20s at the time. They were in like their 40s or 50s. And they said to me, we were having this conversation. We ended up talking about the Lewis drivers. And they were like, oh yeah, the selfish bastards, you know, fucking they had to use this weekend, didn't they? Because it was the anniversary of the 1916 Rising. You know, the biggest fucking trade union event in the history of the country, other than the lockout. Yeah. It just so happened that they were on strike before this and they organized it for this weekend because fuck the government. The government weren't helping at all. And so I got into this big conversation because I'm a big trade unionist. And when I was like, yeah, you know, he says they'd have to take this weekend and blah, blah, blah. James Connolly would be spinning in his grave. I face palmed so hard, lads. Seriously, I nearly gave myself a black eye. I was like, do you even hear yourself speaking right now? I was like, right. Let's go back 100 years. Let's look at James Connolly. Let's look at Jim Larkin, big Jim Larkin, right? Let's look at Jim Larkin, who brought the trade unions to fucking Ireland. I says, do you honestly think they would be in the midst of the pomp and circumstance and bullshit and false displays and whitewashing that we get from our government, that the fucking rebellion wasn't a bleeding rebellion, that the revolution wasn't a revolution, it was just transfer of power? No, it was a fucking revolution, and it started with the trade unions. Do you honestly think that the founders of our trade unions would be up there with the fucking fat arses and the fat cats of our society in the pomp and circumstance, or would they be standing on a fucking strike with workers trying to protect their fucking families? Which one seems more likely to you? Honestly. And they were like, you kind of have a point, you know? I was like, right, then do me a favor. You're going by the strike. Get off the bus with me. Get off the bus with me. You know, walk over to them and just ask them why you're on strike. And listen to what they have to say. And then, instead of reading the newspapers that are telling you these are all fucking greedy bastards, make up your own mind. Haven't talked to them. Jim Larkin is spinning in his grave. Too fucking right. Oh, I swear, I hate when people try to jump on memory like that. Because they've forgotten collective memory. They've forgotten the memory of what the trade unions brought to Ireland. They forgot what it was like. The reason why they forgot was they didn't have to go through it. You know? And so when we, and this is my point to the Americans out there who haven't been in trade unions before, join a fucking trade union. If you don't like what they're doing, either A, change what they're doing by raising your voice and not being afraid to raise your voice because it's your fucking trade union, not theirs. Or B, leave that trade union, go to a different trade union who does reflect what you have to say. Do your research. That's all I'd say. Do your fucking research. I know it's very simple to say, but just do your research and see. And for those of you who are not working, I will let you in on this little tidbit. Go to your trade union. Say that you want a community membership. 9 out of 10 trade unions have community membership. You do not have to be working to be a member of a trade union. You just have to have the ability to work in some form. And that is an important thing to remember, because one of the things that's easy to do is take advantage and constantly hit the unemployed. If you are in a trade union and you have trade unions working for you on behalf of you to say, protect unemployment benefits, raise unemployment benefits, protect medical care, protect this, protect that, you are in a stronger position. You are not alone and you will not lose hope. And ultimately, as rotten as some of the trade union leadership is, the members are incredible. And what they do, even the worst of the worst of the worst, for the most part, they provide working people with hope. And that is a powerful, powerful tool.
Yeah. I was going to say to some of the Americans listening here, historically, people know America has had a great tradition of fighting unions. If you actually go in to look at some of the strikes that have happened in US history, there's been a great tradition of fighting back against employers. And people have to look at some of the struggles of the 20s and 30s, especially during the Depression and so on. I mean, and yes, it's certainly been well documented, some of the corruption that's happened in American unions. I did ask a question in the chat earlier. I don't know whether James Hoffa Jr. is still the president of the Teamsters, which is kind of weird considering that his dad was president of and is synonymous with union corruption, but obviously that's been another little element within American trade unions. I don't know how much that's been overblown. The organized crimes influence that it had at one time was pretty toxic. There was no doubt about that. But America has got a really great tradition, and I think same as sort of a lot of us say, I think we need, whether it be the UK, Ireland, America, wherever it may be, we need to rediscover that tradition. All of us.
Well, yes, absolutely. Sorry. Continue. Something has just come in there, and I will read it out in a sec. It just reminded me that I have others that I need to read out. So just bear with me for a minute. Keep talking.
Okay. Yeah. But I mean, I guess. I mean, my thoughts on this would be, my one thing I will say is this to anyone is, all their problems, first of all, join a union. If you don't like what's going on, do whatever you can to try and hold the leaders of your union.
Sorry, question. Is that me dropping out or is that you?
Sorry.
I'm just wondering, is it me that was dropping out there, or was it you, or was people getting the full?
It might be me, because sometimes I cut it in and out a couple of times. My internet's been a bit funny during this, so it might be me.
Okay, because my internet is actually holding up. It's the stream, apparently. God damn it. Okay. So yeah, it is me. Apologies. I'm still waiting for my fiber. Oh, so everyone else is I'm crafty. Tattie is saying it's the stream. Okay. Other people are saying that it was you. That was kind of just drifting out now. So, Seek Truth, Speak Truth sent some money. Gave me a tip. Thank you very, very much. Says keep it up, lovely lady. I will try. Very hard not to. It's very hard not to. The other ones, I'm trying to find the other ones. I know. Oh, ice cream money from Commander Darklight last week for €20. Thank you very much, Commander Darklight, if you are listening, which if you are, you're crazy, because it will be quite late at night. And there was another one. There was another one. If I can find it, I'm sorry. My brain is fucked. There was another one. And I apologize, I cannot find it. I think it was from Nimrod. Last week. Because I had a live stream last week. If I can get into my fucking thingy. I can't.
Yeah, so
It
I
will
think
be
I recall watching it. I recall watching it. Less said about it, the better, I think.
Let's not dwell on that one.
Yeah.
I got what I wanted to say out, and that's all I wanted to say. But yeah, it will be a lot easier to do this once I get monetization because people will be able to super chat. Yay! People will be able to super chat. I am terrified, by the way, of what you fuckers are going to send me to say. I'm quite fucking worried about that. But sure, all in good fun.
I will tell you now that my first super chat to you is just going to say, go on, go on, go on, go on.
Oh, Jesus, the Father Ted thing?
Yeah. Sorry, I do it to Irish Demon all the I do it to Irish Demon all the time, so
go on, go on, go on, go on, go on, go on, go on. There you go. You didn't have to.
There you go.
That'd be nice. Tiny Captain just come in. Hello. We were talking about trade unions, Tiny Captain. So welcome. Fuck off, Tusk. There you go. Is that good enough, Tusk? I dread the day Tusk gets the ability to force me to say something. But yeah. Jeez. Right. Sorry. So what were you saying? Why join a trade union? People were saying they didn't realize that most trade union, and here's the thing, guys. Trade unions are only as good and only as strong as their members. So that is why a lot of fucking trade unions are shit, because their members aren't taught that they can be active. So if they have an army, and I don't mean army. If they're talking about an army of unemployed people who are willing to go into workplaces for them and nudge, wink, wink, join a union, hey, then that is always a good thing. If they have unemployed people who are willing to donate their time, even if they don't have money. So when I was unemployed, in the slight bits that I was unemployed, my membership was reduced. It was like £1 or £2 instead of the traditional £5 or £6 or whatever it is, and up to £20 if you're working a decent job. So it depends on where you're working, what you're working, but I swear to God, it is worth it. And do shop around. No two trade unions are the same. Shop around for one, the trade union that your bosses will actually engage with, and two, the trade union that reflects you most. I'm in 2 trade unions at the moment because I've been in one trade union since I was 13 years old. My granddad actually paid for my entry into that for the first couple of years until I could actually afford it. And I've been with them for so long, the idea of leaving them would terrify me. Even if I was unemployed, I still wouldn't leave that trade union. They're a fucking good trade union. And then because of the job that I'm in, they actually deal with a different trade union, so I'm also a member of them. So you can actually technically be members of 2 trade unions if you really wanted to, if you're crazy enough like me. But it's just, again, the other thing as well is that trade unions also, when I went to university, here's the thing, we have a grant system in Ireland, but the grant system only covers tuition. Without the trade union, I would not have been able to get through my first year of college because they did a bursary grant for me so that I could be able to live. So that's another thing. Look in your trade unions whether or not they have tuition programs, because that can help. Trade unions are more than just working fucking money and or wages and conditions. They're much, much more. They are much, much more, and you will always get out of it what you put into it. So if you are willing to put the time and the energy into the trade union, you will get so much back. I'm not going to say that they're perfect, because they're not. They're definitely not. But having them there and having that to fall back on when you do need legal advice, There was other things that happened in my life that I needed legal advice for. There's a legal department in your trade union. You can go in and talk to them about anything. I needed needed legal advice about a. So when I was actually in university, I was living in a place that had no heating during a very fucking cold winter. And it was my trade union who gave me the free legal advice. Well, it's not free legal advice because I fucking pay my dues, but the legal department are there if you need to use them for anything. Not even when it comes to fucking your workplace. So it is very, very important that you look for a trade union that reflects what you need. Because my trade union saved my life so many fucking times. It really did. Saved my ass so many times. And a lot of people are only getting this for the first time. They're only getting this information for the first time.
Keelah, I was just say, I think most unions I know have.
Are you there? You cut out? Or is that me? Han, can I be heard on the stream?
I can hear you. I think it's my internet again now.
Okay.
It's my internet. But I would say, yes, but most of them, however, have legal departments or deals set up with, legal firms where you can get legal representation on a whole number of things. Either for free because you're a union member or at a very reduced rate, depending on what it is.
So yeah, I mean, a lot of people who are on this stream will, the people that are in trade unions will already know a lot of this. But even within the trade union system, if you're not a shop steward or if you're not a higher up in the union, you won't know this because it's never explained, or it's rarely explained. And that's why understanding your rights, understanding and doing, that's why I'm saying a trade union will only give you what you put into it. If you go to the trouble of actually reading your handbook, your membership handbook, and seeing what you're entitled to, it can be a huge benefit in areas of your life that you didn't even realize. When I had really, really difficult times, not only did they set me up with legal advice, but they also helped me get a medical team that was suitable for me. They helped with that because they also they talk with different unions and they know people within those unions that can actually advise you on who to speak to if you need medical advice or mental health advice. They're more than just workplace relations. They're more than that. They're a huge support network that, if used properly, you can get a lot out of.
And I will say as well, I mean, they can have a role in, as you brought up with obviously in the apartheid thing earlier, they can have a impact or a voice in much wider political issues. I went to a trade union conference and a subject, and one thing we ended up debating on, and I was the year I was delegate, I actually got up and spoke on this, was conversion therapy. And we've got that, passed in, this union stands against, conversion therapy. And even perhaps a more famous one, if anybody has seen the 2014 film Pride, that as a result of kind of a lot happened, the National Union of Mine Workers were key in getting gay rights enshrined in the Labour Party's manifesto, actually, really getting that into the forefront of politics. They can have a impact on much wider things than just industrial issues.
Have a good night, Mario. And this is kind of what I wanted to end on, because when it comes to social issues, I have direct experience of this. When it came to the Eighth Amendment in Ireland, we had to have a serious, because my union is pro-choice. They've always been pro-choice. And absolutely incredible trade union. I really wouldn't want to give it up. But my trade union brought me along to the the National Women's Conference of ICTU, which is the Irish Congress of Trade Unions. And they were putting up a resolution for the trade union movement as a whole to get behind the Repeal the Eighth campaign. And it's very hard when you have rich women sitting in high-paying jobs to explain yourself to of why abortion rights is a trade union issue. And what happened when they brought myself and my friend to that event was the woman who was supposed to move that motion came to me and said, look, you have direct experience in this. You're the reason why we're putting this, because of the way in which you spoke at our national conference, which put this firmly on the board for our union. We want you to move the motion. And at the time, I was in my 20s. It was fucking terrifying, but she had enough faith in her young member to say, you know what, you move the motion. And the way in which I put it to them was, 10 women every day have to leave this country, get on a flight. That's like all of impact over there, that table of impact, getting up out of this room, walking straight out of this room and onto a flight. And I made a very impassioned speech of why it's a trade union issue. We need, as mothers, we need, and who need abortions, we need people to look after our children. We need to take time off work. For me, because of the situation I found myself in, I ended up leaving my job and I was unemployed. There was a lot of stuff that happened in and around that. And what happened was the most conservative women in the fucking country voted to support the repeal the Eighth Amendment campaign. And I'm telling you now, we would not have gotten a repeal of the Eighth Amendment. We would not have gotten genuine abortion laws in Ireland without the trade union movement behind us. We wouldn't have got it. It would not have been successful. And, these movements, we need the trade union leadership. We need the trade union members. But the reason why we need them is because we are them. These are our peers. These are the people that we live in communities with. And this is what separates a society from an economy. We live in a society because of trade unions. I don't want to live in an economy. Yes, the economy is important, but it is more important that we have social interaction, that we have a society, not just an economy. And governments and conglomerates, businesses, and I support private property, by the way, they all tend, when the chips are down, they all tend to forget that we live in a society and we deserve to live in a society. So that's why I would say, if you are not in a trade union, go look them up. Go invest the time, invest whatever little energy. You do not have to be working. You can be a student. You can be unemployed. You can be a lone parent. You can be anything in this world, but you can be reflected in a trade union. Do not let anyone scare you away from what you deserve. You deserve protection. You are more protected as a group than as an individual. As an individual, they can pick you off one by one. As a group, you're stronger. And that's why I wanted to have this discussion. Because it opens the door for this discussion. And thank you to the Amazon workers for having the fucking balls to actually stand up and even have that discussion. Yes, they didn't win. They didn't win on that occasion. There are more discussions happening right around the US. And it's revigorated the talks right around the world of why trade unions are important. So with that, Goddess Scummer, is there anything else you want to say? Is there anything you want to shill as well? Now is the time.
Okay. I'm not gonna do a long speech. I'm just gonna how can I say about trade unions? I'm just going to quote from the film Rise of the Planet of the Apes. Apes alone, weak. Apes together, strong.
Hell
So
yeah.
basically, yeah, I do have a small channel. I've got a little stream. I should have a little stream coming up for Sunday. It's 1 p.m. UK time. I think that's 8 in the morning if you're on the east coast of the United States. I do this regular stream with a creator called Noodle, which is a bit more light-hearted, where we go through a lot of the older Asterix comic books and have a bit of a laugh, but actually talk about some of the real history of the Roman Empire, because Noodle's a historian. So that's what I've got coming up on Sunday. So if some people want something a little more light-hearted, feel free to come and check that out.
And there we go. There is his link. If you are not subscribed to Godless Scummer, go over and have a look. Give him a subscribe. Give him a bit of support. And thank you so much for being here. Seriously. It's a big discussion. It's a big discussion.
Yeah, thanks for having. Well, I mean, when I heard you were going to do this, I was like, Keelah, please get me on for this one. This is one thing I can actually talk about, So
well, I mean, look, it's a valuable discussion, and having someone in the community that has so much experience being a shop steward and being in the heart of it, it is important. Yeah, just don't ask them about football. Fuck the Super League. That's all I'll say. Fuck the Super League.
That's been the basis of my last 2 streams. What you just said there.
Fuck the Super League. See, I did it in one sentence. Right, folks. Thank you so much for all of your support. Thank you for being here. It was a big discussion, and there's still a hell of a lot that I could say. And a hell of a lot I want to say. I wish every single worker in the Amazon plant all the best of luck in the world. I hope there's no retribution, and I hope they get what they're looking for. Besides that, I have on Sunday, 12:30 p.m. BST, 11:30 a.m. UTC, because I think that's easier for people. UTC. I don't know, but 12:30 my time, Irish time. We are doing the Life on the Flip Side. We are here on this channel. I have Critical Cripple. I can't wait to have Dave on. I've been on Dave's a few times. I love Critical Cripple. And we have Jessica G on, so it's going to be a fucking party. You know it's going to be a party.
I think that's
fire too. It's going to be fun.
That's going to be a fun stream.
Yeah.
That's going to be a fun stream.
And Tusk is still not getting his dinosaur. Or not dinosaur, fucking dragon. You're not getting your dragon. You don't get a dragon. No dragon for Tusk. Telling you, no dragon for Tusk. But thank you. It is sleep time for me because, yeah, no, I'm actually not in work. I deserve a fucking lie on. That's what I'm going to have. But yeah, there's a few things coming up. There's a few big things coming up, especially when it comes to Pain of Progress. So please, guys, please do stay tuned for that. You guys know how much I love Stephen Cooper Reason. He works hard. So I do hope you will support what happens next with the Pain of Progress. Very, very exciting. Keelah can't do fuck all. I'm gonna be honest, it's amazing that I get out of bed in the morning. But thank you guys again for being here. I will see you all on Sunday. If not, on the 7th. I think it's the 7th. First Friday of fuck off. I know, I see Tattie-bogle. Dragon Tusk. No Dragon Tusk. No Dragon Tusk. Pain of Progress will be entering a new phase. Let's just say that. It will be announced on Life on the Flip Side, hopefully this weekend or next weekend. I'm not sure. Depends on what Jeff wants to do. So I can't wait for that. And now I'm rambling and I'm tired. It's midnight and I want to go to sleep. Can you tell how tired I am, people? Anyway, have a good night. I will see you all on the flip side. Yes, I actually get to use that one. Peace out.
Bye.